Imagine for a moment. There's a person in your city who has been ruining lives for years. Squeezing money from the poor, destroying families, and nobody does anything about it. What if you could stop them? What if getting rid of them would actually make the world better? Would that be a crime? That's the question at the heart of Crime and Punishment. Written by Fyodor Dostoevsky in 1866, this novel is considered one of the greatest works of literature ever written. But don't let that intimidate you. This isn't a slow, boring classic. This is a psychological thriller about a man who pushes himself to the edge of sanity, and what happens when he gets there. If you've never read it, don't worry. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this story has haunted readers for over 150 years. The year is 1865. The city is St. Petersburg, Russia. On the surface, it's one of the most powerful cities in the world. But just beneath that surface, the city is rotting. The streets are full of drunks and beggars. Families are being torn apart by poverty. Landlords and moneylenders prey on the desperate, taking everything they have. In a tiny, suffocating rented room in one of the city's worst neighborhoods, lives a young man named Rodion Raskolnikov. He's a former law student, brilliant, proud, and completely broke. He hasn't paid his rent in months. He barely eats. He spends most of his time alone in that cramped little room, avoiding his landlady, avoiding people, avoiding the world. But Raskolnikov's problem isn't really money. If it were just money, he'd find a way to deal with it. His real problem is much more dangerous. He thinks too much. And the idea he's been thinking about lately is one that could destroy him. Here's what Raskolnikov believes. Humanity is divided into two types of people. The first type is ordinary people. These are the masses, the ones who follow the rules, obey the law, and never change anything. They live and die without leaving a mark on history. Society needs them to function, but they are essentially just part of the background. The second type is extraordinary people. Napoleon, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. These are the ones who changed the course of history. And here's the key thing. They did it by breaking the rules. Napoleon marched across Europe, millions died. Caesar crossed the Rubicon, civil war erupted. But we don't call them murderers. We name cities after them. We put their faces on coins. So Raskolnikov asks himself, if extraordinary people are allowed to step over moral boundaries for a greater purpose, could I be one of them? And then he finds his test. There's a woman in his neighborhood, a nasty old moneylender named Alyona Ivanovna. She exploits the poor, she's cruel, and she hoards money that could help hundreds of people. Raskolnikov calculates it like a math problem. Her death would be a net gain for society. One worthless life in exchange for saving many. There's just one question left. Does he have what it takes to actually do it? Raskolnikov goes back and forth for days. One moment he's certain. The next, he's disgusted with himself for even thinking about it. But once the idea takes hold, it won't let go. Finally, he does it. He takes an axe, arranges a visit to the moneylender under a false pretense, and walks into her apartment. He kills her. Then, as he's searching through her belongings, the door opens. It's Lizaveta, the moneylender's half-sister. Gentle, kind, completely innocent. She was never part of the plan. But she's seen him. And so Raskolnikov kills her too. Two people dead. He stumbles back to his room, barely holding together. And here is where Dostoevsky's real question begins. If the theory was correct, if Raskolnikov was truly extraordinary, why is he falling apart? Napoleon never trembled after a battle. The answer was there all along. Raskolnikov isn't extraordinary. He's just a young man who convinced himself he was something he wasn't. And now he has to live with what he's done. In the middle of all this darkness, there's Sonya. Sonya has also had a hard life, a very hard life. She's made sacrifices most people couldn't imagine, all to keep her family alive. But despite everything she's been through, she hasn't become bitter or broken. If anything, suffering has made her more compassionate, more alive to the pain of others. Raskolnikov confesses to her. Not to the police, not to a priest, to Sonya. And her reaction surprises him. She doesn't run. She doesn't judge. She weeps for him and for his victims. And she tells him, go to the crossroads, get down on your knees. Confess to the world. Because you've sinned against yourself and against others, and the only way forward is through. Sonya represents the opposite of everything Raskolnikov believes. His worldview is cold and rational. People can be used as means to an end, emotions are weakness, the strong have the right to determine what's good for society. Sonya's world is built on something completely different. Every human life has worth. Pain has meaning. And true strength isn't the ability to do terrible things without flinching. It's the ability to face the truth about yourself. Sonya reads to him from the Bible, the story of Lazarus, a man raised from the dead. Dostoevsky isn't being subtle here. Raskolnikov is dead inside. But resurrection is possible. The question is whether he'll allow it. The novel is full of brilliantly drawn supporting characters, each of whom illuminates something different about Raskolnikov's story. Svidrigailov is perhaps the most chilling. He's a man who has gone much further down the path Raskolnikov started on, someone who has completely abandoned all moral limits. He uses people, he manipulates, and he feels nothing. He's essentially what Raskolnikov might have become if he'd had no conscience at all. And his ending is bleak and haunting. Junia, Raskolnikov's sister, is strong, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. She's considering an engagement to a wealthy man she doesn't love, purely to help her family financially. When Raskolnikov finds out, it fills him with rage, and also guilt. His family's sacrifice was one of the forces that pushed him toward the murder in the first place. Luzhin, the man who wants to marry Junia, is a different kind of villain. He's not violent or dramatic. He's just deeply, casually selfish, a man who sees every relationship as a transaction, and every person as a resource. In his own way, he's living out a version of Raskolnikov's theory without ever having put it into words. Eventually, Raskolnikov can't hold it together anymore. The pressure inside him becomes unbearable. Sonya's words keep echoing in his head. He walks out into the street. He goes to the crossroads she described. He gets down on his knees in front of everyone passing by, and he weeps. People stare. Some laugh. He doesn't care. Then he goes to the police station and confesses. He's sentenced to 8 years of hard labor in Siberia. But here's what's important. Dostoevsky doesn't end the novel at the confession. Because the confession isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new one. Sonya follows him to Siberia. She lives nearby and visits him whenever she can. At first, Raskolnikov is still closed off, still too proud, still fighting some internal battle. But slowly, something shifts. The ice inside him begins to thaw. And one morning, without quite knowing why, he reaches out and takes her hands. He weeps. Something has broken open in him that was sealed for a very long time. That moment, not the arrest, not the trial, is the real turning point of the novel. Crime and punishment is about a lot of things, but at its core it's about one question: can a person escape the consequences of what they've done? Not the legal consequences. The internal ones. Because what Dostoevsky shows us is that the real punishment for Raskolnikov's crime isn't 8 years in Siberia. It's what happens in his own mind the moment after the axe falls. You can outrun the police. You can't outrun yourself. The novel also warns us about the seductive power of theory. Raskolnikov didn't commit murder out of greed or passion. He committed it because he had reasoned himself into believing it was justified. And that's the most dangerous kind of wrong, the kind that comes dressed up as logic. But the book doesn't end in despair. Dostoevsky believed in the possibility of redemption. Not cheap or easy redemption, the kind that requires actually facing what you've done, accepting the pain, and choosing, slowly and painfully, to become something different. Dostoevsky wrote this in 1866. More than a century and a half ago. But the questions it raises are just as alive today. Can a great purpose justify terrible means? Does intelligence give someone the right to decide who matters and who doesn't? And can a person, after doing something truly awful, find their way back? The book's answer is yes. But the path is long, and it starts with telling the truth.